This is the Dr. A Show with your host, Dr. Will Aguila.
School is starting up again, and some kids are going to college, others are moving up to high school or middle school. These are exciting times for the students and the parents. There's also a lot of stress that occurs, and often it's related to decisions that our kids will now have to make. Will we be happy with their choices? What happens when we as parents do not agree with decisions that our kids make? Do we love them no matter what? Well, our first guest today tells us that we can do just that. We will learn how to deal with our kids as they grow up and face a brave new world. In our second segment, food addiction expert and author Dr. Debbie Donofsky will tell us how she conquered her personal food addiction while losing 150 pounds and overcoming her childhood obesity. Her inspiring story is a testament that emotional overeating in children can be prevented. Stay with us for an hour that can change your life. First today, as a parent, I know that there are many moments when our kids make decisions that you don't agree with, and this leads to significant stress and oftentimes a breakdown in your relationship. Well, our next guest is here to tell us that does not have to be the case. We can learn to understand why our kids make the choices that they do and how we can work with them to help guide them. Brenda Garrison is an author and speaker with 3 daughters of her own. She has appeared on Family Life Today, Moody Radio, and The Harvest Show, among others. Her newest book is Love No Matter What, When Your Kids Make Decisions You Don't Agree With. Hi, Brenda. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Now, Brenda, the very first chapter of your book is titled, Who Are You and What Have You Done With My Child? I can tell you that question resonates in my mind with my kids. Why? Why is it that this is such an important question? Why do we ask this?
Because I think when we are holding that little baby in our arms, we think that this baby is going to just always love us and grow up to become the person that we dreamed they would be. And we, start to enjoy their little toddler years and their preschool years, and they're just so sweet and so precious. And as they get older, they get more and more their own personality, and we're seeing things that we have never seen before. We're like, what is going on? I have no idea what to do with you, how to relate to you, and we are almost taken off guard because this little person is now becoming a bigger person of their own.
We're afraid to let go, right? We're afraid of change.
Oh, my word, yes. Yeah, because what could possibly happen if they start making their own decisions? And, yeah, it would be, it's a very fearful thing. It can be a very fearful thing if the parent isn't ready for it.
Now, you say there are 3 types of decisions that our kids make. Decisions of preference, decisions that seem foolish, and decisions that are immoral or illegal.
Mm-hmm.
How do we learn to handle each of these?
I think first by getting perspective. Just sitting back and going, is this really a big deal? I have seen parents with wonderful children just get bent out of shape over table manners, over hairstyles, over just, things that are just not to be a big deal. And so if you make a big deal out of that, you're going to be making a big deal of everything. And pretty soon your child is going to pull away and realize they cannot please you. So you have to think, is this really in the long run a big deal? Is this something I want to let come between myself and my child? And
so tell me, but give me an example of a decision of preference, because that you kind of touched on that for a minute there.
Okay.
So a decision of preference would be that I prefer that my child do something a certain way and they do it differently?
It could be as minor as that. It could be what college they go to, what career they choose. It could be if they're choosing to color their hair something other than a natural color. Yeah, it could be. And sometimes, you want your child to go out for sports and they decide they're more of an artist and they want to pursue music, and then, but you had high hopes they'd be a football player. And so just, things like that, we go, really, are we really going to let that become an issue between us and our child?
And at the spur of the moment, right there and then, it may seem like it's such an important decision in your mind. But
definitely.
How do you take that? How do you learn to take that step back and kind of re-engage? How do you do that?
Sometimes you might just need to talk to another parent who seems to, be a little more, less excitable than yourself. Sometimes you might just want to not step back, but step forward into the future and say, in 5 years, how important will this decision be? In 5 years, what will this decision, or the way I handle this decision, what will it do to our relationship?
Well, and tell me an example of a decision that seems foolish.
Oh, there are so many. Let's see. Because in the book I give research where the human brain does not fully develop till about age 25 to 30. And of course for boys, that's going to be closer to age 30. So the front part of their brain, the frontal lobe where they are making the, if I do this, then this will happen kind of decisions, that's not fully developed until age 25 to 30. So it could be, anytime they say, oh, I've got this covered, I've got it all figured out. No, they don't. With our daughter, she was about 18, 19 years old. She wanted to move out on her own, which sounded like a good idea. However, she did not have money to support herself, and she wanted to use college money to support herself. And we're going, this doesn't just keep coming. When it's gone, it's gone. And to us, that seemed foolish. It wasn't well thought out. It was basically to get out of the house. She wasn't thinking ahead to what it would do for her future plans. We went ahead and gave it to her and let her do it. But to us, it seemed like a foolish idea.
Well, how do you deal with that? I mean, because basically you let her do it. I mean, it seems foolish to you. Did it turn out to be foolish?
It has been quite a ride for her. Actually, it turned out pretty well for Katie because she needed to get away from us so she could start processing things on her own. All she could hear was our voice. So when she moved out, she made a lot more mistakes, and some of them were more than foolish. However, she did get her feet on the ground. She did get a full-time job. She did go back to school. In fact, she graduated from college in May, and yesterday, or over the weekend, we took her to graduate school and got her set up in a new apartment in graduate school. So she learned out in the real world what she couldn't learn under our roof. And I think sometimes parents are fearful of letting their kids learn other than, it has to be here, I have to tell them how it is. But how much have we learned by experience? And our kids need to be able to do the same. It gets kind of messy, but it's necessary.
So then a foolish decision may not always be so foolish, and so don't be so quick to decide. There might be more to it than that. Kind of
Excellent
step back
point.
and take a good look at it.
Excellent point.
Now, you say that as a parent, you need to understand that it's not always about you, but that is the case a lot of times, and we parents are guilty of using the wrong motives when we discuss these issues or plan these issues with our kids. Some of these motives that you described there, I've noticed some in myself and some in other parents, such as let's talk about some of them, like pride.
Sure.
What happens when your motive is pride?
Well, if we're parenting out of anything other than what's best for our kids, we're parenting out of wrong motives. So when we are parenting from pride, we want to look good to the neighbors, the other kids' parents, whomever. We're not going to be making decisions that are best for our kids. They're going to be what is best for us, and we're going to be frustrating our kids, exasperating our kids. And again, what's that doing to our relationship? It's just making it more and more difficult to have a relationship with our kids. And we need to realize that without a relationship with our kids, we have no foundation from which to parent. We need to build and nurture that relationship, and that gives us the basis and the foundation and the place to parent from.
So put pride aside, because pride is really not a good motive to use in making those decisions, correct?
That is definitely correct, yeah. It really doesn't matter what the neighbors think, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now here's one I'm guilty of, your expectations. I have certain expectations. They may not always be the same as my kids. So how do you lead with that?
Adjusting our expectations for what is, again, best for our child. Where do you see your child's talents? Maybe you have one child that's very academic, comes to them fairly easily. You have another child that struggles academically, but they have strengths in other areas. And maybe you have a child that doesn't have academic skills or artistic skills, but is really a people person, really can just really, communicate with people and is really good with people. We have to learn what to expect from our kids. This is who they are as a person, and that they are going to do life differently. Just like if we look back to our childhood years, we did life differently than our parents expected, and we need to realize our kids are going to be their very own person, very different from us, and not to expect things from them that they can't deliver or that are just very unreasonable.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And then I want to get one more very quickly. I only have a few minutes or a few seconds before the break here. But comfort. We certainly don't want to do something out of just comfort and not make any effort whatsoever, because it's just comfortable to be where you're at. Very
much so. Yes, and I've seen parents who they don't want to make an effort to be at the kids' events, to, stay up late to make sure they get in safely, all of those things. This isn't about us. It's about our kids. And if we wanted, to remain comfortable, we maybe shouldn't have gotten married to begin with. It's all about growing and being there for the other person.
Great. We'll touch more about that when we get back from the break. What are the common mistakes that parents make with their kids? Find out when the Dr. A Show continues after these messages.
And now, back to the Dr. A Show with your host, Dr. Will Aguila.
Welcome back to the show. Our guest is Brenda Garrison, author of Love No Matter What, When Our Kids Make Decisions You Don't Agree With. So, before the break, we were talking about how parents can make decisions coming from either a source of pride, your own expectations, or a source of comfort. But when your kids make decisions that you don't agree with, we as parents sometimes don't respond in the best ways possible, and some of our common mistakes are the ones we're going to talk about and how to avoid them. So there are different types of parents, right, that you discuss in the book. One type would be the servant parent. This parent woos the child by giving them everything and hoping that if they strayed away from what you want them to do, because you woo them and give them everything, they'll come back to you and do what you want to do and please you. Is that correct?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't work because kids know that there's something weird going on here. This is not the way it's supposed to, work with a parent and a child. So it really doesn't create respect in the child for you. And obviously it keeps the child from growing up because you're taking on their personal responsibility. So it definitely is not an effective parenting style at all.
And you got the checked out parent, the parent that gives up when it becomes evident that the child won't change.
Exactly. And, it's tempting. It's like, oh, I've done all I can. But especially when it gets harder, especially when they hit high school, even junior high school years, I see so many parents checking out. And it's like, this is the time to lean in. This is the time to make the effort. Put things on hold in your life that aren't, necessary. Let your golf game go. Let your quilting club go, whatever. But be there for your child. Lean in and be there for him, especially when he's not saying he really appreciates you being there for him. But those are the times they really do care. And so many things that our kids were at, they acted like they didn't want us there, but you catch them looking up to see if we were in the stands or we were there, and it means the world to them. It really does.
And you're right about that. You made a good comment there that even though it doesn't seem that they care, they do. They're watching.
They really do. When Katie was in college, she went to her art class, went to the art museums in Chicago. And afterwards, they went to lunch and, had a meal or whatever. And Katie was all excited about the art and wanted to discuss it and all the different things. She was so excited. At the table next to them, there was a little family having a birthday party for one of their children. And the kids that were with Katie started looking over at that little birthday party going on. And they just had like really sad faces, and Katie could tell they were not going to be talking about art. And her friends were like, we never had a birthday party. And then, the waitress comes over and then, oh, would you please take a picture of all of us? And she takes a picture of the family. Nobody ever took our picture. And then they pull out the presents. And pretty soon these other kids are so depressed because they were never celebrated as children. And Katie had been celebrated, at every turn. And she was ready to move on with life. But they really, really need us to lean in and love on them and be there for them, even if they're acting like they don't care, because they really do care.
Let's go a couple more of these because I think they're very interesting, and you see a lot of the different parenting styles out there. The gotcha parent. This is the one that brings up a source of disagreement every single time, and they try to ambush the child, which is, you say it's one of the most harmful things you can do is ambush a child.
It is, because who wants to be with someone where you never know they're going to pull out that question, when are you going to get a job? When are you When are you going to get registered for fall classes? When are you going to do this? When are you going to, and just at every turn, there's never a conversation that can just be a calm, enjoyable conversation, because you never know when mom and dad is going to pull out the little surprise question and be on you again about that same thing that they're always on you about. And if that's one thing that's going to come between you and a child in your relationship, that is a big one.
And then there are others, but I think the other one that I want to touch on, because I think is pretty important, is the compare and despair parent. One that compares a child to a sibling, friend, or somebody else. And that's really a very bad thing to do, isn't it?
Oh, it really is, because, again, you're having expectations for your child that they can't meet. And our kids don't all process the same way. They don't all take in the data or everything that comes into their lives and be able to process it in the same way. Every kid processes differently. And we expect all of our kids to be mature in this way, to be able to handle all these situations well. We are having way wrong expectations. They're all going to be different. They're all going to go at life in a very different way. And we, as the parent, need to step back and get to know our kid and see how we can equip each child differently for life, and not expect that every child is going to do, because every child is going to have their strengths and every child is going to have their weaknesses.
That makes sense. Now, of all these parenting mistakes, which one do you think is the most damaging?
I would say we also have the my way or the highway parent, the controlling parent, a parenting style that does not allow the child to express themselves, and even to express themselves within the relationship. That it's that, you know what, I want you to do this, I want it this way, this is my decision, not your decision. That is going to, I used to, when I first began speaking on this topic, I had a vision in my mind of this illustration where the farther back I would pull the rubber band was like the tension I was putting in my relationship with Katie. And every time I did something that was putting tension on it, that was one of these, poor parenting styles, they just pulled the rubber band back farther. So then when she finally got out of the house, it was so taut that she would just fly further away. And it just occurred to me that the less tension I would put on that rubber band, then when she was released, she wouldn't fly away. She might, venture on to another state to go to grad school, but that was with a good relationship. She wasn't flying away to get away from us, from all of our bad parenting styles. So I think if we can give our kids room to make their own decisions and express themselves and enjoy the person that they are, then we're going to have a better relationship, and we're going to have, less of our kids trying to get away from us when they finally can.
That's a very good analogy. I like the rubber band analogy, and you're right. The my way or the highway, it's all or nothing parenting, and there's just no leeway there. There's no room to process. I agree. Many kids are starting out as college freshmen this month, and you can help guide the freshmen into good decision making. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, let's see. I think a few things. First, just talk facts with your kids. This is going to be some of the things you're facing, that you will be faced with, temptation, situations, whatnot. It doesn't have to be necessarily a bad temptation, but even just money issues, time management issues, sleep. Some of these kids are in your room are going to be wanting to party, and you're not going to be able to sleep. So these are some of the issues that you're going to be faced. Here are some ways that you can deal with them. Here are some factual ways that you can deal with these issues. I also encourage parents to give them a what to do in case of protocol. When my husband was a Marine, and they just trained their unit so that everyone knew over and over, they would drill how to handle a certain situation, so every person in that unit could do it basically without even thinking. And just remind our kids, this is what you do in case of. If you get somewhere, don't get in the car with someone who has been drinking. Have a number, call someone. This is what you do in case of. So that they are prepared and equipped. When these situations come up, they know, this is the best way to handle it. Now, of course, are they always going to do that? No, they need to know when you have a consequence from your poor decision, you're going to have to bear that consequence. Maybe whether it be a speeding ticket or whatever that may be, you're going to have to bear that. I'm not paying for that. And just letting them know what's at stake. If they're on scholarships, their scholarship's going to be at stake if they don't keep their grades up, if they get caught partying, that type of thing.
Let's shift gears here, because I also want to talk about kids who are entering high school. How do you handle your child, a high school student, hanging out with the wrong crowd? You know, school starts, and all of a sudden you realize halfway into the year that you know you don't really like the crowd he's hanging around with now.
Right, and that is, we had that experience as well. That is really, it's touchy because sometimes the more you protest, the more they want to be with those kids. As a parent, you might want to try and figure out why, because just because you think a certain group of kids are, quote, good kids, doesn't mean they are, and doesn't mean they're treating your child well. So he or she may have pulled away from that group, or the group that they went to grade school with, for a very good reason. So you might just want to gently, have a conversation, just no voice that says we're having an official discussion, but just kind of figure out what's going on there. And I also said with the kids, you know what, if you have trouble with these kids, if you get in trouble because of these kids, you will bear the consequences. I am not going to go easy because they've got you into trouble. You're going to bear the consequences of hanging out with them. And we just always had, no matter if the friends were, quote-unquote, good friends or not good friends, we just never let our kids have total, unlimited access to friends. I think just, a certain amount of time, and then we're done. Cell phone doesn't need to be in the room at night. The computer does not need to be in the room at night. We need to have time as a family, and they just need time just to be themselves, just to relax a little bit.
So learn to be a proactive parent.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. And of course, your kids aren't going to just, run to you with arms open wide and go, oh, Mom, thank you for pouring so much into me. But eventually they will. It'll be years, though.
Brenda, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Again, the book is called Love No Matter What, When Your Kids Make Decisions You Don't Agree With. And Brenda, the website is Brenda Garrison, GARRISON.com.
Thank you, Doctor. I really enjoyed it.
Coming up, do you know the warning signs that your child may be having an eating disorder? Stick around. The Dr. A Show continues.